Again, hi everyone. My name is Anna Roisman. I am the founder with Tatiana Arbuzova of InnovateQA event. And I welcome everyone today to this meetup that we dedicate to the data testing. Our esteemed speaker today is Sandesh Gawande. He is the founder of IceDQ, which is a data platform, and I will explain. I hope Sandesh will explain more what his company does and what his product is specialized in. But I will talk a little bit about Sandesh. Since 1996, which is around 30 years, Sandesh successfully led many large-scale data engineering projects for various banks, insurance, healthcare companies such as Deutsche Bank, JP Morgan Chase, Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, Nomura Securities, Oppenheimer Funds, Bridgewater, Excel Capital, Qualcomm, North LB, and MetLife. And this is amazing. Just about all major banks in financial services as well. Sandesh experience is in data operations, data architecture, data testing, data migration, and data quality. And also in graphs, document databases, and big data. So the most hot field today is in data. Sandesh co-founded IceDQ Software, the #1 data testing, monitoring, and observability platform, after encountering the difficulties of quality assurance in data-centric projects. With IceDQ, Sandesh is helping institutions to automate cloud data migration testing, ETL, and data warehouse testing. Also big data testing, and to implement integrated data monitoring and observability solutions. So I welcome Sandesh to teach today, tell about his area of expertise. He's probably one of the most knowledgeable people on data quality in the world. So with that, I'm giving it to Sandesh. Welcome, Sandesh, and we love to hear from you.
Sure. Hey, Anna, thank you for the kind introduction. I will try to be brief, but as Anna spoke, I've been working in data engineering for almost, I think, 25, 30 years now. Work for all major banks, insurance companies, and stuff. And the basic premise of this product, or what I'm trying to do in the marketplace, is if you are from QA background, a lot of you are from a quality assurance background, but many of you have not seen the data testing. Like, quality assurance for mobile application is different. Quality of assurance for application development is different. But there is a big market for data-centric projects, like, from big data to Snowflake to data migrations and all that, CRM projects and all that. And what I found is there is a lack of a product or platform that can be used for data testing. Then, so based on this, IceDQ was created, which stands for Integrated Check Engine for Data Quality. And it expands from data testing to data monitoring and data observability. But in this chat, I'm going to focus only on the data testing aspect, because I think it is essential for QA professionals to understand this opportunity where they can do not only application testing but data testing. And it's very different in terms of what you do with data testing. With that, and with Anna's permission, I can start with the PowerPoint. Anna, do you want me to wait or just get started?
Oh, you definitely start, because we have 24 people now waiting for you to talk.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Um, so before we get into this, I'll just give an example project, right? So TSB Bank, is one of the big bank in Europe. They were trying to migrate their IT platform like the trading platform where you have customer records and all that. And they were trying to migrate to a new system like Proteus 4 platform. And during this migration, they were supposed to migrate about the change the application where they manage the customer accounts, number one. And number two was to migrate the data from one system to another. So why this project is important? There are two reasons. um, Quality assurance people are trained in quality assurance, obviously, but they are mostly trained in application testing. So when they did this migration, they focused on application testing, but not on data migration testing, right? And the result of this, what happened, uh, when this project failed in a big way and they lost about $1 billion. And some of the reasons of some of the impact of this was TSB, like lost about 1,300 customers from TSB lost their money in their account because the data was not migrated correctly and it was not tested correctly. There was a reputation loss. Actually, TSB Bank had to come on Facebook and YouTube. Can you imagine that? And say, "Oh, we are sorry. You cannot see. There are issues with our data," and there were people were furious as to what happened. So there was a big reputation loss. The another big thing that happened, that the TSB Bank was fined about 48 million pounds, and then the CTO of TSB was also fined. The CIO actually was fined about 100,000 US dollars for the failure of this project. And fundamentally, officially, if you look, the TSB IT meltdown cost 330 million pounds, but the estimated cost of this failure was about $1 billion total. Now imagine the root cause of this. There are many 4 or 5 reasons, but one of the main reasons for this is they totally ignore data testing. They don't know what data testing is. They don't know how data testing is done. And I think it is essential for anybody who works in QA or work in QA related activity to also understand data testing, or if possible, they can open up this as a new avenue for their profession. Um, if you look at this data from the data about data, so this is the amount of data. I can't even count the numbers in gigabytes is generated per day. And then in 2010, we used to create 2 zettabyte of data. Now it is 181 zettabyte of data. So what is happening? This is expanding like at an exponential pace, and that creates opportunities for us QA people to look at this as an opportunity. And if you are management or if you are managing a company, you can look at this as an opportunity to make sure that your million dollars project don't, or multi-million or billion-dollar project don't fail. And here are some of the examples of the data sources where this data is generated. CRM systems, example Salesforce, ERP systems, SAP, Workday, e-commerce system, Shopify, trading platform, SunGuard, all right, a marketing platform, Adobe, HubSpot, Google Ads, social platform, Facebook, YouTube. So all this data is getting into your system, and it is important for you to ensure that you have a way to test these systems before they go into production. Um, if you look now, the question is, if I'm going to do data testing, what kind of projects can I think about? Number one, if you look here, there's a data warehouse testing. That's one option. ETL and data pipeline testing, data migration testing. All the companies are moving to cloud data migration testing, system migration testing, big data testing, data lake testing, BI report testing, and AI testing. And there are many more. I can't go into detail of each and every kind of project, but if you see this kind of projects, data testing is involved. So let's go into, we'll go into the details, because I promise to not only give you the opportunity, but also give you some insights into how this testing works. So any project, regardless is a data-centric project or any application project, there is a requirement, there is design, there is coding, right? There is testing and QA, and then finally there is deployment. So if you are working in a big organization, go and check in your organization and you'll find that many of the companies, even though they have data centric project and they are supposed to follow the SDLC lifecycle, the testing and QA is mostly focused on application testing, not on data testing. So if you take it from here, so is it a data centric project? Yes or no? If it's a data centric project, are you doing data testing? Yes or no? You have to choose one of the path. Most probably, yes, you have to do it. And if you are doing it, are you automating it? Yes or no? And then the question is, if you're automating it, are you buying a tool, or you build versus buy? You have to get something from outside, or you have to build something inside your organization. And buy versus sell, buy versus build. I'm not going into the arguments. This has been settled for a long time that we should focus on our business and not in somebody else's business, right? So from here, let's go into the details. The first question that if you are looking at data testing, this is the question. If you go for an interview, they will ask you. If you go into a management meeting and say, hey, are we focusing on data testing? They're going to ask you, what is the difference? So let's go to the difference. If you look at the left side, application testing. In the application testing, there is a user interface. You have some kind of UI, and what happens is you look at the UI, and if you click somewhere, something should happen, and then you record those and play this in Selenium or some other tool. If you look at data testing, there is no UI. There is a background process that runs as a ETL job, or some kind of command line utility that is running in the background. Since there is no UI, the question is, how do you test it? And we'll go into the details in a few minutes as to how we can test it. The other difference is there are few transactional records in application testing. You do order and check how the order is flowing, or you log in into the screen with the password and then click few places, so only one record or two records will go there. But if you go into data testing, here we are not talking about one record or two records, but we are talking about millions and billions of records. It's a question of if you look at the example that I gave, there were about 5.2 million records, and it is humanly impossible to check or test records more than 10 or maybe 100. You're the best person in the world, probably can do 1,000 records. Beyond that, you need to automate this testing. And with big data, you're talking about billions and billions of records. In application testing, you test the code, whatever the scripts are written, you test those. But in the data testing, you test the data process, the data pipelines, the processes that take data, massage it, process it, transform it, and load into another system. They are usually called the ETL or data pipelines. That's what you need to test. In application testing, you need to understand scripting and all that. In data testing, you need to know SQL. Most of the knowledge is you need to understand data models, you need to understand SQL, you need to understand how to write queries and things like that. Another interesting thing is, and this is very interesting, number 5, is in application testing, most of the corner cases are discovered by the business or the subject matter experts. But if you are in data testing, the corner cases are discovered within data. What does it mean? It means you have to take millions and billions of records and run it through the test. And there you'll find some kind of corner cases, because it is almost impossible to manually go through it, or you can't sit in a place and say, let me find all the combination of data that I can have. So these are one of the some of the top 5 differences between application testing and data testing. I will go further from here and drill down on the actual testing process. So, there are many data testing techniques. There is what we call as manually creating data. There is something where you create the ETL. I'm not going to go into that. There is a blog on the ISDQ website where you can read about it. But here we are going to talk about the rule-based data testing technique, right? So if you look at this, ignore these round things for now. And if you look at this data flow diagram, what is happening is you receive files and they are put in a staging area or a data lake area. From there, the ETL process picks it up, puts into a data warehouse. From there, you can have extracts or you can put data into a data mart. And from there, you have the reports. So at each stage, remember, anytime you develop something, you need to test it. So here when you get the data, you need to test it. When you build this pipeline, you need to test it. So every time the data moves, you need to make sure that whatever logic is applied is actually happening the way you expected. And how do you test it? The question is, how do you test it? Is you create rules. Now, what we can do is take, there are about 1 to 7 examples over here. I will run down through these 7 examples, and once we get through it, we will know almost 90% of the basic understanding of data testing. So if you look at this one, on this side, what is happening here? You receive the file from a source system. Now, there is a big fundamental rule that you can create, a test case that you can do. Hey, whatever data I received, is it in the format that they promised me? Or is the data within the file that I received is in the satisfying all the conditions that I wanted? For example, this customer file has customer code, name, date of birth, and sex, right? So I, I need to know that the name is not null because it's a customer file. I don't want the name to be null. The date of birth should be present, or it should be in the correct format. Let's say it's DDMMYY, right? So I need that data in that format. So I can create rules and say, select from the file and find out, show me where the customer code is null, not null, the name is not null, the date of birth is the right format, and things like that. So the validation rule is actually a concept where the data is compared to what you know from the business user, where you understand what is my expectation, and it is not written somewhere, but it might be documented, or you will be told by the business user, and then you embed it in your test case. So this is a validation rule, and this is called the source validation rule, where you are getting it from the source side. Then if you look at the second one, what happened is you took this staging data, the file that you received, and you dumped it into a staging area or in a data lake. Now, if I received a customer with 100 records, I need to ensure when I load it, it is 100 records. It cannot be 55 or it cannot be 49. It has to be 100. How do I ensure that the data in the target side is exactly same as the source side? And the way to do that is what we call as reconciliation rules. And what is reconciliation? So actually, let's take a step back. If you go to the previous rule, the data is there, and I write some functions or rules that will validate the data. Here, what is in the target system totally depends on what is in the source system. So the test cases are dynamic. And what I mean by dynamic is the if I receive 100 records on the left side, I will have 100 records on the right side. If the name is empty here, the name is empty here. If it is a Tom here, on the right side it has to be Tom. And everybody knows quality is what is expected versus what is actual. So the question is, what is expected? The what is expected is in the left side, and what is actual is on the right side. So if I can do set theory on this, then I will know if the process that loaded data from the source to the target is correct. And again, this is source to target reconciliation. So I will have rules like, if count the number of customers on the left side and the count the number of customers on the right side, they should be same. If they are same, check there is a customer A, B, C, X, Y, Z, then I should have A, B, C, X, Y, Z on the right hand side. If the let's say the all these columns, the values and everything there should be 100% match between what I received in the source side and what is loaded on the target side. So what we saw so far, number one is the validation rule. Number two is a reconciliation rule, where we are doing source to target reconciliation. But obviously, some don't always get the exact data that you take, and it's not always the same on the right hand side because you are doing transformation. Because ETL stands for extract, transform, and load. So if you go here on this side, oh, actually, hold on a second. Okay. So if you look at this ATL reconciliation, so what happens when I receive daily transaction at individual level, but then I summarize it at the day level. So if I receive million transactions per day, and I am summarizing them by date or by product here. I see the product ID is here and the product is here. So now there is transformation rules that is happening here. So the data is not as it is, but it is getting transformed. So now, in this case, how do I test if the sales transaction that I received from the left side are actually the same that are loaded in the daily summary table? In this case, what I will do, I will say select product and total quantity and total amount from right hand side. But on the left hand side, since it's at the transaction level and not at the product and date level, I need to group it by the date and product, and I will sum the quantity, and I will sum the total amount or the transaction amount. So essentially what I'm trying to tell you is when you do reconciliation, the prior one was simple one to one, but it is not necessarily the same way that happens in production. So now in this case, you are doing a summary of the sales transaction and loading it and comparing it with the summary on the right hand side. So we covered the simple value source validation, source target reconciliation, ETL reconciliation, where the transformation rules are involved. Let's go further. Just because you whatever you receive, you loaded in the target system, that doesn't mean that the data is correct. And I'll tell you why. Because the business users usually know that when I am receiving data from the source and I am processing it, so the everything might be correct, but still the data might not be useful for business. For example, uh, if you look at in this order table, there is a net amount, there is a gross amount. And what is net amount? Net amount is gross amount minus commission amount minus taxes amount minus fee amount. Now, this has nothing to do with how the data was processed or how you did ETL, you loaded it manually. I don't care. Even if your ETL process is correct, I don't care. What I care is the if I subtract from gross amount the commission, taxes, and fees, then it should match to the net amount. And if that is not true, then there is something wrong in my business process. So these are called business validations, and these are independent of the source system. And hopefully everybody gets this thing, and we'll have a time to ask questions, and we'll go back to this. But fundamentally, the point is business validation rules are independent of the ETL process. They have nothing to do with the ETL process or how you transform the data, but they are given by the business user or the SMEs to the data testers so they can implement it on ISDQ or some other platform. Now, here's another example. You have shipment and sales and shipment. We know that you cannot do shipment without receiving orders or without doing a sales transaction. So, is it possible that you loaded sales transaction, everything looked good, you loaded shipment and everything looked good, but it is possible that for some shipment you never received the sales transaction from the source side? So a business reconciliation rule, essentially what we are doing here is we are saying, hey, I need to make sure that for every shipment, there has to be a sales transaction. And if there is no sales transaction, there is a problem. And how do we know there is a problem? Because my business rule says you cannot ship a product unless somebody orders. It's common sense. But how do you implement common sense is by creating these rules while testing these applications. And that's one of the key point I wanted to bring up over here. So you hopefully you understand business reconciliations. Let's go next. Now it is easy. Once the data is in the database, if you look at the right side here, from the database, you obviously build reports. So you need to do a BI report validation and reconciliations to make sure that whatever is in the report is valid. So similar to the other validations, and I'm not going to go into the details, but let's move on. BI report reconciliation, as I said, if we are doing data testing, you compare the report with what is in the table and say, hey, there are, let's say, 10 products in the product table, but let's say in the report it is showing 11. It is not possible. So this kind of reconciliation. So on one side you need to connect to the database, on the other side you need to connect to the BI report, and then do the reconciliation. So we covered these 7 basic types of data testing scenarios that you will face if you get into this field, or if you're running a project, you should ask your team to do this kind of testing. Next, I will go through quickly a data migration case study or an example where you understand how data migration testing is done. So let's say I'm in a SQL server, and let's say I'm moving to Snowflake. So the first thing you do is when you migrate the schema first. So you need to create a reconciliation rule that compares the SQL Server with the Oracle or Snowflake schema. Because there is an employee ID there has to be employee ID here, there is an employee name there has to be employee name there. The schema more or less has to match with what you are expecting with the legacy system. The second thing is you migrate the data. Now, when you migrate the data, the initial state of the data should match 100%. And how do you ensure that the data is migrated and it is exactly matched? The way you can do that is by comparing your SQL Server database data. And so what you do in, for example, in ISDQ platform, you connect to the SQL Server on one side, you connect to the Snowflake database on the other side, and then you compare the data and make sure, oh, million records in table A, million records in table A. There are ABC customers, ABC customers, ABC customer with Sam, Tom, Don. So Sam, Tom, Don. So you can compare all these things and make sure that the system is in a consistent state between the legacy and the new system. Now, the next step is delta, because once the system is in the initial state, you need to you incrementally update both the systems and make sure that the data between the legacy system and the new system still in the same state. The key point here to remember is your application has changed, your system has changed, your database has changed, but not the business rules. So you cannot have, let's say, if you do a $4 transaction in the legacy system, for example, if you have a $1 million balance and you do a $4 transaction in the legacy system, so it will be $1 million $4. And if you do the same $4 transaction in the new system, the data should be exactly matching. If it is not matching, then obviously something is wrong. And then finally, once you are there, you do the monitoring and observability on this platform. So here are some of the key takeaways, and then we can go to questions. One of the things that everybody need to understand, just because we are QA professionals doesn't mean we know all kind of quality assurance. Data testing is different. That's number one. So since it is different, we need to be trained differently. And we are starting a university program where there is a pre-training and all that, and hopefully we'll give you access to that. But you had to have dedicated data testing team. This data testing team has to be taught and educated and trained in data testing, right? So that is very important. Uh, Within a project, like we saw the TSB case study, I shared it for a minute, but you basically saw that how a multi-million-dollar project failed because they didn't do data testing and there was no clear-cut team. So one of the key things that you need to get is you cannot ignore data testing. Most of the projects are now data-centric, and excuse me, and you need to put teams together and assign clear data testing roles and teams, and share it within the organization. So that is about people. If you look at process, we need to do is automated repetitive tasks, right? Because remember, you can't test millions and billions of records manually. The another thing is, if you're doing migration, don't migrate and test the data simultaneously. Make sure the system is not at a stable condition, and this is much more detailed. But fundamentally what we are saying is, if you're migrating to a new system, the new system is unstable. While you can do data testing, but you need to do a final data testing when the system goes live, is stable. uh, Data testing many times is confused with ETL developers or data engineers. Yes, they can do it, but ultimately you need independent auditors for data testing, and that is very important. Another key point in data testing is, you saw reconciliation. When you do reconciliation, that means you need access to the source system or source tables and the target system. If you don't have both of them, the problem is going to be, you don't know what is you know what is actual, but you don't know what is expected, because the expected is in the source system plus the transformation rule. These are the two things that you need to know for you to do reconciliation or data testing. So that is the point on the process. Now, platforms, right? As I talked about, we are talking here millions and billions of records and thousands of tables and billions of dollars at stake. Uh, get a data testing platform. There is no point in being penny wise pound foolish on this kind of projects. The other thing is, you need to integrate this data testing tool in your CI/CD pipelines, so that you can certify and deploy as you go, as part of your CI/CD cycle, and not do it as an afterthought. And the last and very interesting point is, unlike application testing, where you create sample data and sample scenarios, in data testing, you not only test some data, but you have to test all the data. You can't rely on sampling, because based on chaos theory, chaos experimentation, chaos testing, a lot of scenarios will come from the data itself that you are using. So fundamentally, what I'm trying to tell you is, if you are looking at this data testing, you have to look it from people, process, and platforms, and together, only together with proper education and proper application of this methodologies, you will have a successful data project. And there's no point in risking your project or your reputation. As you saw, like, people were fined, companies were fined, customers were angry, all because you are not paying attention to data testing, or your management or developers or the testers don't understand data testing. With this, I will take a pause, and let's Anna, open up for Q&A and things like that.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this great lecture. We have so many questions here. I can read them, or you can read them, and I can read for you. And if somebody wants to ask the question using
I can go one by one. I see the first one is from Harry, and then
yeah, absolutely, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, hold on a second. I need to change my glasses to read this. Okay. The question is from Harry. I think you can unmute him, or he can. Thank you for this. Is the type of validation done entirely data or on strategy at its app? No, Harry, you never do sampling in data testing. You can do. It's not never you do a sampling, but you have to go through all the data for testing, because you will never find these complicated scenarios. And I can give a half an hour lecture on why that is, but read about chaos testing. And chaos testing, all these scenarios are discovered through data. You have to let the data speak to you, and it is in the data. All the information is in the data, so you have to do you cannot rely on strategic identify sample. You will fail. that is almost guaranteed to fail. There is a question from Maha. How do you do reverse data sync in case of flash cut? Sync
If
reverse.
you don't mind, I will read the questions because not everybody see them. We're
Okay.
recording it. Yeah. How do
Yeah,
you do the reverse data sync in case of flash cut?
I don't get the question. Flash cut. Is this related
okay.
to
Yeah,
migration?
let me explain you that. Say that you have two systems like source and target. So say
Uh,
source is SQL Oracle and
uh,
target is your Postgres. Okay,
yeah,
so you are doing a data migration testing, correct?
correct.
So my question is here, once you move the data, it's a flash cut. That means you're moving. So that means you will not have all the data will be moved to the new system, and there will
Yeah.
be not old system will be existing. Okay, so but there should be a way that whatever the data it is coming from the new system, it has to go back to the old system as well, at least for a month. That could be a buffer period. Okay, so this is something a flash cut. Say that you have a new house, a old house, you're moving out completely, right? So this is a flash cut here. So how do we do a reverse data sync?
See, the normally the way data migration is done is you do initial state like how I showed, and you still have the copy, but the question is you actually it's more like a ETL thing, but you cannot bring the data from the new system because you will have to write. Let's say you wrote 100 processes to take the data from the legacy system to the new system. So if you want to pull data from the new system back to the legacy, you will have to write 100 another processes to do that. So I won't recommend that, and maybe I can have a separate conversation with you. But there's something, either I don't understand the question, or there's something wrong with this process, because it is very how will you do it? If you wrote if you have 1,000 tables, you migrated 1,000 tables, and now you need to re-migrate 1,000 tables, so you need to write all the transformation and everything in the new system.
All right. Say for example, yeah, you switch from old system to the new one. Okay. So the reverse sync is something it's like having a safety net to go back to the old system if things goes wrong.
Okay. So I'll answer
Yeah.
that. In that case,
Yeah.
what you do
Mm.
is if a dollar is introduced in the new system, you also introduce a dollar in the old system. So you keep them in parallel, in sync, all the way active. And the only time if the new system fails, you revert to the legacy. But you don't move the data from the new system to the old. You actually do parallel transaction in both the system. This is called a parallel production run, and
Oh,
I can talk to you in the long case, but the technical terms for that is production parallel. You need to
okay.
do that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Sure, Sandesh. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. So the next question is, am I right in thinking that to be successful with data testing, you'll need a copy of production data?
Uh, yes. Again, it goes back to the first question. Unless you are, you take. Okay, so there are. The answer is unless you take production data, you won't be successful in your data testing, because the use case, the chaos theory says only through random samples you will discover these corner cases. Okay. The only issue from bringing production data to the QA environment is number one is there are some PII and PCI data that you need to obfuscate, or do some hashing with them. So that is the only thing. But if anybody, Steve, if anybody tells you that, hey, you don't really need it, he's already setting up you for failure. Look, luck works, but you cannot, luck is not a strategy, hope is not a strategy, right? So that is not a strategic process to do that. You should always take a production data, complete production data before you go live.
Thank you. Next question from Bettina. how complex is the SQL knowledge that you would require for data testing? Anything else that simple select and join tables queries?
The SQL knowledge that is required is 99% is very simple, select, group by, and all those things. Where the knowledge is required is understanding the behavior of the data. Like, let's say I received 100 records, transactions, but I am grouping them by, let's say, customer ID or a product ID. No, I need to understand. So the most of the time is spent in understanding what is happening. And I'll give a simple example. It is a very if I decide to fly from New York to, let's say, Los Angeles, it's very complicated. I need to wake up, get into the car, get into the airport, check into this thing, fly in the flight, land there, go home. But for testing, all you need to look is, at the exit point, check if Sandesh came out or not. It's a very simple SQL. Select from target table where Sandesh is true or false, right? So no, the SQL is very simple unless you don't have a data testing tool. If you don't have a data testing tool, you have lost all the battle already, because in data testing you need to compare a source database, which might be a file or which might be a Oracle database. On the target side, it could be like a Snowflake, and there is no tool, unless without a product, without a platform like ISDQ, you cannot connect left and right side. And if you don't have that, it's very complex to do in pure SQL. Without a tool, with a tool, SQL is very easy. Without a tool, SQL is almost like committing like harakiri here. It's like uh, unbelievably difficult.
Thank you.
Hopefully I answer that question.
Yes. um, how many companies really realize the significance of data quality? And are there any certifications related to this, or any data engineer can do this?
Yes, okay, less than 1% of the big companies have thought about data testing. So, for example, we are in some of the big companies like, Morgan Stanley. We are in sorry, Pfizer and all other big companies. But see, again, see, if you look at your question, many people confuse data quality with data testing, right? So data quality is a big umbrella. People understand the significance of data quality, but they don't understand the significance of data testing. Let me give an example. If our processes are developed and tested properly, you should have 99% of the problem, or 90% of the problem should be resolved before you go into production, and only should have issues in data quality issues, some issues in production. So unfortunately, that's what we are talking. We are not even talking about the tool, because I want to make sure that people understand the importance of data testing over here. Uh, are there any certification? So we are offering, you can follow up with our team. We are offering data testing certifications for people. It's mostly going to be free, but that is one of the things that we are doing.
All right, great to know that. Should source data be stable and just cover all the transformations?
Okay, zero. Should source data be stable? Yes, you can do when it is unstable, and that is part of the testing. But ultimately, you have to wait for it to get stable, and you cannot sign off. The final test cannot be signed off unless you get into a stable system. That is true.
All
Negative
right.
testing.
And negative testing with corrupted data, log test. So should the source data be also
Yeah, that's my question. Michal is speaking.
yeah.
So maybe
Thank you.
let's me give some more details. That's very important because not always you from your data provider you've got good quality data. Yeah, That's why
Yeah.
probably you do this source data validation. But let's imagine that something went wrong and you just put your data in your ETL pipeline, yeah? And did you have the opportunity to test this kind of negative test with corrupted data and expect the logs, yeah, with termination of the process or warnings or something like that, yeah?
I'll give you an example. Okay, if you remember my presentation, there were two parts. There were technical tests like source validation. Source validation is basically a negative test, right? There was a source target reconciliation business, and then there was the other part was business reconciliation. Remember, if you give me garbage in the source, the processing system will process it and store the garbage on the right hand side. So in technical test, you cannot cover this. But remember what I said, in business test, I don't care what you say, I don't care what you process, I don't care what data you gave, but the business knows, like for example, my discount cannot be more than, let's say 90% or 100% of the product value, right? So these are business rules that the business knows. So you need to create those kinds of business rules to identify. So it doesn't matter if it's negative or positive. I'll give another example. Remember, without orders, you cannot ship. So that is a business rule. So if you give me bad data and all that, those kind of scenarios will be only caught if you do business rules. The negative test will not be caught in your technical rules over here. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I've got two others. So about the not stable source data schema, yeah, I've got a project in the past that we didn't have, from the data provider stable schema. Even in the contract, we've got some requirements, some rules to the data quality. But unfortunately, they provided us, different schema, let's imagine different column names, some another additional columns and so on. Any best practices from your side how to handle this kind of not stable or dynamic schema of source data? Yeah.
Yes, I'll give you. There are two things. Number one, you have to do the source validation on the data itself to figure out if anything is wrong in the data. Like for example, if they give date, you need to have test that is in a certain format in a file, because in a file you can put date in any format, correct? So that's one part. For schema, and I skipped this because I can't cover all the topics. There is something called a schema test, which I have not covered here. But basically, where you say that I expect first column to be, let's say, customer name, second column to be zip code, third column to be, I don't know, something else, email. So you need to, every time you get a file, you need to test the schema and say, hey, ISDQ, is the schema matching the one that they promised me or no? So there are ways to do schema tests in platforms like ISDQ. So that tells you if this accidentally change the location of the column or the format of the data. These are the two things that they will mess up every time they provide you data. Did I answer your second question?
Yeah, and the last one, before I just ask the last question, I see some certification about the data tests and the significance of data quality. And I'm a tester and not a data tester. And in last few years, I was on the many different European testing conference. And to be honest, guys, there were not so many subjects, topics, presentation, workshops on that conferences, which touched exactly data testing, ETL testing, this kind of, I think that's terrible, because the subject is very important, and which we are talking about is very important. And unfortunately, it's still a niche. It's not very popular, but I hope it will in the future. And yeah, that's my first comment. And another about the certification. You said, Sandesh, that you've got in your ISDQ the certification. And let's say we've got something like ISTQB certification for testers, mainly for testers, software testers. And to be honest, I'll also ask for that kind of path, because there was a lot of agile testing, automation testing, gaming, mobile testers, everything, certificates for every branch of testing. But unfortunately, no data testing. The path of your let's say if you would like to get this specific role in testing. So unfortunately nothing, yeah, regarding to the data testing. Yeah, so sorry, that's my only comment regarding to the certification and the significance of data quality in the Europe, yeah. And the last question, Sandesh, sorry that I talked too much, but
no, go ahead.
What tests on production? Well, let's imagine that release, we tested totally our ETL pipeline, our data warehouse, and on production, what we should do there? What kind of tests we should apply to monitor business rules? What we should do there?
Remember what we call as in production, when we do testing, we call them a sanity test, right? Because when the system goes live, for some time you need to do this testing, and then there is monitoring and observability. That's a different topic altogether, right? But you have to do almost everything that you have done. If you have an automated system, you need to do repeat all of them, because when the system goes live, it finds all these corner cases, and I can go into details. This will be a longer conversation, but you cannot skip anything. The sanity test, you had to take all the tests that you did during development and QA phase, unit testing and the QA and integration testing, and redo them in sanity for first few days or months, depending on the project size.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Sandesh. Thank you.
Thank you, Michal.
Again, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn or something.
Yeah.
I can answer more
Definitely, I will. A very interesting topic. Thank you.
Yes, it's a really important question. And where do you get the skills for that? And I agree with it's not really, it's kind of a niche.
Yeah, and Anna, the problem is, I can show you the stats. Like almost 70% of the projects are data-centric projects, and less than 1% of the people are thinking about it. So it's very, very unfortunate. So what we are doing, we are doing a data testing training. There's nothing to do with ISDQ, and then we are doing a separate on ISDQ certification. So we are providing both of them. We are going to provide both of them.
That's great. So everybody in the audience, take notes.
Yeah,
all
take benefit
right.
out of it.
All right. Any tips on how to start the journey in data testing? Bettina never done it before. She would love to learn it. And I know you said about certifications that you provide and training.
Yeah.
Are there any other helpful hints how to start?
The only way, okay, there is I can go in the long, but you need to, for data testing, you need to understand three things. You need to understand data models, and you need to understand what the ETL processes are doing, right? Then there is a data mapping document you need to understand. And then you need to understand business rules. Because testing is easy. There's nothing difficult about actually testing or using a product like ISDQ. The problem is understanding the business, what the process is doing. Oh, it is taking a net amount, a gross amount, and subtracting commissions and taxes and fees. Understanding that part is important. So if you can take like some data model skills, like I used to be expert in data modeling long time back, but you understand how to read data models and some SQL, you'll be good on that.
Great, thank you. And definitely reach out to Sandesh. He's wealth of knowledge. Okay. Thank you for the insightful sessions on data testing. How can somebody, okay, so this we already answered the how do you begin the data journey. Is ISDQ available for the free trial period? Will that help to get a knowledge on data testing to better understand the capabilities?
Absolutely, Athira. I think that's a question from Athira. Yes, it is available. You can use it. The best thing is just fill up a request form and you can get it. Shouldn't be a problem. But without if you have never done testing, it will be useful for you to take some kind of introduction from there.
Thank you so much, Sandesh. I will try.
Yeah. Anna, you there?
Yes. How much intelligence ISDQ tool to identify schema differences when column data type differences?
ICQ has it captures the metadata and stores it with it, and then you can compare the source and target, the original schema and the new schema. It is built in, because ultimately the metadata is in the database, or you can put this is what I expect, and it will compare. It's straightforward. How many companies use ICQ? So you can look at the website. Um, we have from Fidelity to I think about 100 companies use our product, and only Fortune 500, the few $1 billion and above companies use this. So we are mostly for enterprise, banks and insurance companies and healthcare and all that. Large financial institutions, healthcare, those kind of companies.
Oh, absolutely. Anywhere that the data is the key. But I would think that with AI development, data will be the key everywhere.
Yes.
Big data,
But
LLM
Anna,
models.
Anna, what is happening is when the new fashionable things comes like AI and all that, they don't focus on data engineering and quality assurance and all that. So that's what happens. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, you didn't. No, it's a great conversation starter. I think we should have another discussion on that, because I do know that right now so much data that they don't do a lot of testing on it.
Yeah.
But I think that AI agents tools will become more and more sophisticated. There is a lot of competition on that market, and eventually the competition will drive the quality. So maybe it's not yet, but I would think that it will be happening. Yeah.
Yes, but their focus is mostly in production. But what they don't understand is by the time you put in the production, you already are hungry and desperate. So the testing comes in the non-production development QA environment. So they should ideally focus more on that.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Sandesh. Yes, we're gonna get this video is recorded. We also gonna get the slides from Sandesh, and we will publish this video to everyone. We're gonna send the recording link to everyone who attended this event. We had enormously large audience today, 69 people. It's incredible. Yes, this
Thank you.
topic is really hot. And thank you so much, Sandesh, for your amazing presentation. And yes, it's definitely the skills of the future, data.
Sure. I appreciate anybody. I don't mind anybody contacting me or my team if you need anything else from us.
Yes, please get in touch with Sandesh. Please take a look at this ISDQ. And it will be helpful to take a look at the tools, because you learn a lot from the tools as well. So yeah, I encourage you to take a look at this and try it out, experience it. Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, for arranging this. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Thank you for attending and having the patience to be here. Thank you.
Yes. And please keep in touch with our events. InnovateQA is also a group on LinkedIn. Join us. You obviously joined the meetup. So yes, keep in touch with us. We're gonna have more events amazing like that. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.